Colonel Sanders started KFC in his 50s. Vera Wang started her company in her 40s.
What happens when curiosity becomes your superpower?
Then you decide what you want to talk about. Then the next step about it is don't hesitate. 6 months off for a guy who's trying to scale is a death sentence. So you have to pump and grind every single week. Would you get your hair cut by somebody that's not committed to giving you a good cut? Why do people go to Disney over like Cedar Point? You can still go on a roller coaster. You can still go on a roller. It's the experience of being at Disney that's the difference.
Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz podcast, where Girlz isn't about gender. This is the show that celebrates the dreamers, the builders, and the difference makers bold enough to start. And so wherever you are tuning in today, we are so glad to have you. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading. And so I'm so excited about my guest today. I'm going to open up with this. What happens when curiosity becomes your superpower? My guest today grew up just outside of Detroit with a hunger to understand how things work through books, documentaries, history, and conversations. That curiosity eventually became a platform. In just 90 days, he built a global audience and thousands of downloads by doing something simple, creating space for honest dialogue. And so I'm excited to chat with him. This is going to be fun. I have a feeling we've already had a little bit of a conversation here. And so I have a feeling this is going to be a lot of fun today. But before we officially welcome him on and I tell you who he is, I do need to do a shout out to our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine.
And with that, I do want to make a mention to head on over to startergirls.com. I tell you this every single week. And why do I say that? For 3 reasons. 1, because if you have missed an episode, it is a great place to catch up. It's also a great place to sign up for our community newsletter, and you can stay in the know of all these fabulous episodes that go out. And then also, if you are an aspiring creator, an entrepreneur, or maybe you're in the thick of it right now and you want to know what your number one success block is that may be hindering your success, well, guess what? I've got you covered. You can go over there and take my 2-minute quiz, and it will tell you exactly what block may be affecting your success right now. So as I always say, head on over to startergirls.com and do your thing. All right. So my guest today, Rashad Woods, founder and host of, I like this, it's Tron. It's a podcast, The Randomness of Nothing. I love this. Originally from Michigan, a graduate of Michigan State University, he turned his lifelong curiosity about people, history, and the world into a platform for meaningful conversations. On his show, he interviews entrepreneurs, creators, and fascinating individuals from all walks of life, helping them open up in a relaxed, genuine way that uncovers stories you don't usually hear. And I think I mentioned in the beginning, in just 90 days, he kind of got this thing moving pretty quickly, surpassed 13,000 Spotify downloads, and proof that authentic conversation still wins. So Rashad, welcome to the show. I am so excited to chat with you.
Thank you very much. And, I'll definitely try to make this as engaging as an introduction. Right now at Spotify, we're over 100,000 downloads, and we're growing every single day. It's an honor to actually be interviewed and have people reach out to me. I'm humbled by that opportunity to be on your show.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited to have a fellow podcaster on here that's doing amazing things, because we just kind of talked about this. We'll tell the audience, you and I talked a little bit before we started this, and we, honestly said that running a podcast is not an easy feat to do. I mean, people think we just get up here and we naturally just do this. And yes, we do. I mean, I love to get up here and do this, but there are behind the scene things we have to do in order to get here and make all of this flow, right?
Without question. And so, and the thing is about it is that you have to have 2 things really going for you to be somewhat successful in this. You have to be authentic, and you have to be patient and let the guests speak for themselves, right? Because too often if you get excited about something or if something really intrigues you, don't overtalk them, right? It's very important for
Yeah.
them to tell their story. It's about them, not you, right? And so there should be a little ticker in the back of your brain, like, okay, I've been talking for 20 seconds. I need to stop, right? And
Yeah.
those are the little things that can help you have an engaging experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to be here and I want to talk a little bit about kind of what led you to that and a little bit about the story. So, back us up real quick and tell us how the birth of this podcast, like, how did this come about?
Okay, so the randomness of nothing. You know how like basically I'm the guy at the barbecue that's either gonna really intrigue you with something random or I'm gonna bore you to death and you're gonna walk away, right? So like like I watch documentaries, I know about like history. I'll never call myself an expert, but I like to dive into different things. I'll know about the Colossus roads, the transatlantic cable line, some obscure inventor that, maybe didn't get the accolades that society, for whatever reasons, didn't really talk about. And then I'll dive into like movies, technology, and so it always like, even when I was playing sports, right? I played sports but I never was completely engulfed with doing that. So while people were still talking about sports, I would always talk about, the nerd topic. Like being a nerd right now is awesome. Being a nerd in like the 90s and early 2000s was not, the thing to be, so to speak, right? So now that the information is at people's disposal, they're more open about their curiosity. Well, I was doing that at a young age. I had an encyclopedia set in my room as a kid, and I just would look up, go to A, B, D, L, Q, just anything that just kept my mind stimulated.
It's awesome. No, I love it. And yeah, and I think that whatever you're passionate about is what you probably should be talking about on a
Right.
podcast, right? You're going to do
Right.
one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what else? What happens is that, it's because I'm not talented enough to be like, oh, I'm a plumber or an electrician. This was my way of being creative in this regard. Right. So, it was very important that said, even when I was thinking of the thought of a podcast, I said, well, what can I really talk about? I couldn't talk about car mechanic or being, construction. But I said, man, I always just know random things and I just know it. Like, and people look at you kind of odd, like, what are you talking about? But then when you find that person that knows what you're talking about, you're like, there, you start going back and forth, back and forth. And so it kind of just came from that.
Yeah, and well, and yeah, and I think that when you bring people on that talk about those subjects that are important to you,
Right.
it lends credibility. It's like you're telling the story, but if you have somebody else telling it,
Right.
maybe
And
you know what you're talking about, right?
right. And so, and what else happens too is like I do martial arts, right? So I have a black
Okay,
belt in Tang Soo Do Korean karate, I have a brown belt in Taekwondo, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. And there's a lot of
love it.
history behind those respective
Hmm.
arts too. So in that course of learning the history about like your martial art, you start learning history itself because there are events that are taking place as to why those things were created, what era, who was the master, did it happen during a war, during a human tragedy? Was there a leader or a dictator in charge, right? So you start learning different avenues about what you may partake in individually with the events that are surrounding it.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about this podcast if you're open about it, because I'm
Right.
sure I don't know about you, but like here where I'm at, I feel like this is a topic that comes up all the time. People are asking me like, "How do you build a podcast? How do you do this? How do
Yeah.
you do that?" Blah blah blah. Right? It's like we could just teach a course on how to do a podcast.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would love to know, like, when you built this out. I mean, obviously you had success very very quickly, and I'm kind of going off my notes right now because I'm thinking about this because I want to know the answer to this. Like, how did you get these downloads so quickly? And because I've been doing this for like 7 years and we've got a good following, but it
Yeah.
took time.
Yeah.
It
I
took
mean,
time. So I'm curious to know what you did. Talk to
I,
us.
I started in my basement, right? So like it was just like you pray that you don't stutter over your first words when you do the
Right.
introduction to somebody. It's almost like kindergarten, right? Like you're like, hey, somebody just want can you just introduce myself and can we play? Right? Just keep it very PG. And so I have to give credit to my parents, like, and this is the honest to goodness truth because they always told me talk when you talk, look at people in the eye, don't stutter, don't stammer, and so that foundation was really built to have a good speaking background. I never say I'm great, like, because everything needs improvement. So I
Sure.
never really had a problem talking to people from various backgrounds or various industries and things like that. It just came easy to me. That particular thing, life's not easy, and anybody listening, I'm far from a genius. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not. So now it came from the point where, okay, if I keep the topic neutral, if I'm respectful, if I don't ask people what God they worship or what ballot
Right.
box they checked, right? That's not this show, right? So if I keep that safe space for myself and everyone else, I think that they'll see that there's no hidden agenda, there's no gotcha questions. I just want to know your story. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how that built organically, that people were like, okay, I can come here. Right. And I think that worked itself out because I'm not touching the third rail. Right. I'm not touching the stove on this show. You know,
Yeah.
that helps everybody involved. So, and then I think when you talk about entrepreneurship, success, and business, those are universal things, right? And so
Right.
people want to know what's motivation like, what's success like, what are those hours by yourself when nobody's looking, and I have to figure something out on my own and juggle that with life, family, kids, career, because doing a podcast is not just getting behind a microphone and BSing a topic for 30 minutes, right? You really have to know your guest, their background, where they graduated from, the first company they built. Um, I don't test them. This is not Oprah's couch. I'm not going to sit back and dive into their worst scenario that ever happened in their life. That's their job to say that if they want to. But doing that has grown organically to get the downloads that I have. And I'm very fortunate that these guests feel open to talk to me about it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you just get people talking, they talk, right? Like you don't have to ask an explicit question and they'll
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but sometimes people tell me more things than I need to know, you
No
know?
question. Right, right. And you always, and like I said, when it is something like that, I'll say, listen, I didn't ask that, but since you shared it, let's talk about that, right? If you're comfortable,
Yeah.
right? So, building, over 100,000 downloads on Spotify, 100,000 views on YouTube. And honestly, in the last 30 days, I got 29,000 downloads and I'm averaging like 1,000 a day now. So like, it's something that, and I will say this, and I love quoting this quote from LL Cool J. He was like, dreams don't have deadlines. Right.
Right.
Colonel Sanders started KFC in his 50s. Right. Vera Wang started her company in her 40s. So people who are listening, who are sitting back and say, your athletic career is over. Okay. Like that's done. Right. But anything outside of athletics, you really have a good shot to try to actually cultivate and manifest if you're
Mhm.
willing to put in the work.
Yeah. So I'm curious with this podcast, is this like, because I know people ask me this question, like, what's your goal with this podcast? Like, what are you trying to do with it? Right. Like, I'm
Yeah.
curious, like,
Yeah.
what this is for you. If this is like, hey, I'm really trying to push this thing and make it big time, or is this still kind of the hobby thing for you?
I think anybody who gets over 100,000 starts getting bigger picture in mind when it
Yeah.
comes to, the success for it.
Right.
But,
Right.
I will take every single day at one step at a time. It's crazy because and I say this respectfully, the level of people who are reaching out are getting a little bit higher now, right?
They
Like,
do. Right.
right. You're
Right.
starting to find out like this CEO wants to talk to you who's like a Silicon Valley or a high tech company. And you're like, the heck you want to talk to me for? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so, I think that the scale can be very, very high. I understand it's a crowded space. I understand that you can never put the buggy before the horse, so to speak. So I'm just happy with whatever happens day by day, but I do have a long-term vision for it.
Good. No, and I think you should. I think
Yeah.
you should. I wanted to hear that from you because I don't like
Yeah.
to assume anything about people. But I
Right.
agree with you. I think when you get to a certain level, you do. And I've said that even here, it's the same thing. Like the level gets higher with the people that are coming in. And
Right.
I do have to filter through a lot of because
Yeah.
I don't have all the space, you know. So I
Right.
love that. I love that you're thinking like that.
You have to, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's almost like you get a little, it's like losing weight. Like you get happy, you lost a little bit of weight, then you start fitting in clothes a little bit better. Then you're like, I'm not satisfied with just fitting in these clothes. I want to be like shredded. I want it. So like when you just want to get good at talking to people. Then you
Yeah.
just want to get some guests. Then you want to start getting some referrals. Then you want to start getting people who want to kind of like promote and advertise and partner. Then your mind starts to say, okay, how do I turn this into a business, right? You don't want to just anything. It's like if you're cutting hair, right? And then all your friends keep asking you to cut hair, cut hair. Well, at some point you have a business, right?
Right.
At some point you have a business, right? You have to sit back and say, hey, I'm a barber, right? Or I have a very large clientele base that wants to utilize my service. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know sometimes the dirty word can be capitalism, right? But like, let's be realistic here. Like it
Yeah.
is what it is, right? And
Right.
you owe it to yourself to sit back and say, and if you do gain a certain amount of momentum, other things come with that.
Yeah. So I don't know what your day looks like. I know what my day looks like when I'm trying to do this stuff, but maybe somebody listening to this right now who's not in this space, because there are a lot of people that you and I are talking to, different kinds of entrepreneurs and creators, right? Maybe
Right,
somebody
right,
listening to this is not in this space that we are, and they go, "What's this like?" So what does a
right.
day like this look like for you in this podcast scene?
Right. So I book all my own appointments, like, and I do all my recordings by myself. I don't have an assistant. I don't have like a co-host. So it's all me, and you have to juggle that with life. You have to juggle that with various appointments. Sometimes you double book, sometimes, and it's tough because you want to say yes all the time, but then at some point you have to sit back and say, is that the right fit for what I'm really trying to accomplish for a show? And it's, are they the right fit for me? Am I the right fit for them? So I haven't ever had those awkward moments where we've had like I've had like, okay, this interview is going south. But the typical day is really just organizing, planning in advance, having a backlog of shows, right? Because life can happen and you still, now that you have a weekly audience, they're expecting you weekly, right? And it's too competitive to sit back and, you're not Joe Rogan that you can take 6 months off, and then there's
Right.
gonna be somebody waiting in the wings, oh well, you're coming back, like, we've been waiting for you, so to speak. I'm not stupid. 6 months off for a guy who's trying to scale is a death sentence, so
Yeah.
you have to bump and grind every single week, because if you want this show to be your show, my show, to be successful outside of a family vacation or a death or a very extended illness, you got to keep pumping out shows weekly.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. So are you doing your own edits then too? You're
Yeah.
pretty much handling it all? You are a rock
Yeah, the
star.
only thing I really don't do is I'm the worst social media person in the world. So, I let
Yeah.
people do like the clips and the animations and all that other stuff. I don't do that. I have people that handle that for me, because, like,
Handle for you.
my idea of a good social media post, honestly, is gonna be like, hi, bye, have a nice day.
Here's the podcast. Go find
Yeah,
it.
like just keeping it like honest with you like that, like, oh, they're like, oh, you need these algorithms and these hashtags and these backlinks. And I'm just like, listen, with all due respect, that ain't me. So,
I'm with you on that too. I struggle. That's probably my
oof,
area of struggle too. Cause I just want
it's
to do this. Like
yeah, yeah. And
I just want to do this. Yeah.
you want to talk to, like, your sponsors and your corporate,
Mhm.
connections and things like that, and interview your guests and organize things. Being up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about hashtags and backlinks, like, come on, man. Like, you gotta do what sometimes you gotta do. You gotta say, listen, I'm gonna put that in the hands of people that know what to do. And I'm just gonna leave
Yeah.
it alone and just check in to make sure that what you say you can do, you're doing.
Right. No, I love that you're showing all this. And one of the things that I always say is like, I feel like, and you probably could too, that I could show somebody how to do a low budget podcast, like how to start a low budget
Oh,
podcast and work it. Right. And so I love
absolutely.
that you're in the game, like you're in it. You're still in your spot place right now doing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah,
you know?
and the thing is about it, the process has been democratized, right? So, like,
Yeah.
people who are listening, people who want to start, it's like if you want to sing. Before, you would maybe have to send your demo tape out, pray to God that, there would be some record producer that, would listen, and then you go through all this, and, 5 years of going, and I'm not saying it's not still like that for some people. I have no idea, because I can't hold a tune. Having said all that, you can put your music on SoundCloud, do cover songs on YouTube, upload your own music. So the barriers for entry have kind of decreased, right? So
Yeah.
if I wanted to be a podcaster 20 years ago, you would have it would have been a lot more work, or nobody would have known about it. Maybe you would have had to, go through the conventional route to do things. Now you can go in your living room, your basement. Some people can go in their car, right? You can go, so it's not a question of accessibility now, right? Everybody's situation is different. So, I can't say everybody has high speed internet or cell phone.
Right.
But if you want to figure it out, you can even go to your local library, get one of the rented rooms in there, and just knock it out the ballpark.
Yeah. No, that's good that you said that. And that's true, because when I started, I went in studio and I started 7 years ago, and we went live on Facebook, and it
Yeah.
was cheesy. It was like,
I mean, listen, I've had to interview, I've had to do stuff in my basement. I've had to do stuff in my
yeah.
living room. I've had to go in my dining room. I have a studio that I rent from downtown Detroit. When I wasn't able to make it to downtown Detroit, I've gone to my local library. Like, I had to get creative with whatever I had to do to make sure that this show was going to be successful, because your guest
Yeah.
doesn't care what you got going on. They
Right.
booked their
Right.
date. You said you would hold it. You said you would get their story out. Now it's my job to make sure that I get that part of my portion done.
Yeah, no, I love that you're sharing all this because I think so often people don't really understand, especially when you're in the influencer space, right? Like they see traditional businesses as business and then they look at this side. It's like a whole different world because this
Right.
is not something we've had for years and years. We've had podcasts, but not in the realm that we're at now.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
and absolutely, and the other thing about it is too is you don't have to follow the rules. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not coming up
Yeah,
here, you're not gonna see me cursing and screaming and, throwing a verbal tirade, but I don't have to follow anybody's rules. Like,
right.
okay, you have to you get a hosting platform, you vet the one that works best for you. You use the trial periods of the recording software to make sure your speed and everything like that. They all have their ups, they all have their goods, their bads.
Right.
But, for the most part, you can kind of just say, okay, this one works for me, and then you decide what you want to talk about. Then the next step about it is don't hesitate. Don't, like, that whole idea of like, well, I'll record next week. I'll record next week. Like, listen, man, if you tell your guests, like, listen, this is my first show. I'm going to do my best job at this, but I'm going to be respectful. Most of the time, it's going to be a good experience, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it happened organically. But that whole idea, like, full disclosure, this is what typically happens to people. And, I've been
Right.
guilty of it myself. If you tell people you're doing something, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 people are going to pat you on the back and say, that's awesome. That one person that really actually knows what they're talking about is going to say, show me what you did. And if it's
Mm,
a, I'm not sure, I'll get back to you, you're full of it, right? I can pull out my podcast in my phone and say, this is my show, right?
yeah.
And that's a different conversation, right? It's a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
conversation when you show you can do something as opposed to talking about it. Because how many people do we know that they say they want to do something, and then when you ask them a month later, did you start it? It's they go, hey, sorry, I got busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of podcasts do that. I mean, they start and they stop. You see them.
Right.
There's a lot. I mean,
It is, and
it's a big market, but there are a lot that start and don't follow
it's
through.
hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard, right? And then maybe one of the reasons I don't have a co-host is because I don't know, and I say this respectfully, maybe it's not for somebody to be with me. Maybe I'm not good for them because the amount of time that I would be putting into this, I would expect it of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to do like 2 or 3. If I say, I'm going to be out of town, you got to host these shows, and you got to be willing to talk to these guests. And if it's not compatible with them, but see, the difference is that's my fault. That's my
Yeah.
fault for not, it's not your fault. I vet you properly? You have to own this. Like, this is my name attached to it. And so,
Right.
self-ownership is really difficult in life. And I'm not
Yeah.
perfect at it. Anybody who knows me will say, Rashad, like, you're full of it talking about it. I had to learn that you have to be all in for something.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you, I've had 2 co-hosts and I love them both, but I think I learned kind of that in the process. That's how we came up with the whole Starter Girls because it was 2
Mhm.
girls that were starting a movement. That's how it
Right.
originated.
Right.
And I realized in the middle of that yeah, I my work ethic is just like extremely demanding and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
expect if anybody's and I don't know that that's why they left necessarily, but I do
Right.
expect anybody that's working with me, it's really hard for them a lot of time to meet my needs because I my name is attached and I'm sure you have I have my show trademark now, so I'm really
Yeah.
like
It's yours.
everything I do is like
It ain't nothing to joke with.
yeah,
It's nothing to play with. I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I've missed events to do recordings. Things that I
Yeah.
had to push off,
You're
when
taking
you're
it
driving.
serious.
Yeah, when you have to drive to the studio, find a parking space in downtown Detroit, on a Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, because that's the time you held, and the security guard gets in at 9:15 instead of 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, it is what it is. Like, but
right.
you can be there. I've done Saturday nights because somebody was in Australia, right? And that's the time that it's synced up, time wise. It is what it is.
Yeah,
I put my name on it.
right. Well, and I think what you're saying there is just being committed to what you're doing, and I think that extends to anything we do in life, right? 'Kay, whatever you're gonna
Yeah.
do, be
Yeah.
committed. Because if you're not committed,
Yep.
nobody's gonna take you seriously, right? Like, if you ain't
Right.
serious, nobody else is gonna take you serious.
Would you get your hair cut by somebody that's not committed to giving you a good cut? You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly.
Like,
That would be bad, Rashad.
right. Or or
That'd be bad.
somebody, right, or think about it, you go out to eat,
Yeah,
and every
right.
single they have to make sure that they don't poison you or make you sick every single time.
Yeah,
So if
right.
anybody has any slippage or any, like, I'm packing it in today, that's a life or death
Yeah,
consequence. I'm fortunate I'm not in
right.
the life or death business, right? This is
Yeah,
this is a show. I love it. I'm heavily committed to it, but I'm not saying, I'm not getting people out of deep end waters and doing, firefighting. But,
yeah.
so, people who really deal with life and death, they have no margin for error.
Right, right. No, I love this. I love that you're sharing all this, and I'm excited for you. I think that it's good that you're having this success. You're committed, obviously, and you're having this success, and you're passionate about it. I think those are. I mean, you've got the
Right.
ingredients of a good thing going there. So,
Appreciate it.
I would love to know, like, because I think this is one of my favorite questions. Success. It's like my favorite question to ask when I do this
Yeah.
show because we all have different. I think we all have universal truths that we talk about in this, but I feel like we all the little
Yeah.
nuances are different. So I'm curious to know what does this look like for you in this podcast world? What's that success mean to
Well,
you?
I think the first thing is you don't do the mirror theory, right? So like, the idea that your show is not at the top or you're not at, 150 million views and, on, whatever morning daytime show, you need to get that thought out of your head. You need to
Yeah.
measure your success by the fact that, I have
Mhm.
100,000 downloads. People are reaching out to me. I have a publicist, now in Los Angeles that
Yeah.
I work with, which is weird, that has articles written on me. So my success is the one that I've cultivated specifically for my specific brand. I don't think about anybody else that's making another show because
Yeah.
it's way too saturated. I need to focus exclusively on what I'm doing. Now, can you get better practices and tips? Like, man, that person really knocked it out the ballpark. Oh boy, I better avoid doing that. Those are the type of things. But like as far as like the mirror theory, I don't do it, right? It's like I have a black belt in karate. I'm not ever going to sit back and say that I'm not Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? Like that,
Right.
you can't do that because that's not fair to yourself.
I agree.
Cultivated my own skills in this particular art, and I'm capable of doing this because my body, physicality, and other things have allowed me to do that. And that's the important thing. It's just, be happy with what you've accomplished.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm resonating from all of that is just kind of like stay in your lane, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
stay in your
I
lane. I think about Michael Phelps back in the
yeah.
Olympics when they were talking about he was swimming and the other I don't know who the other guy was, but he was kind of looking back to see where he was, and Michael Phelps just kept kind of
That's it.
staying
That's
focused, on the goal, the end.
I've used this example on a different couple episodes for the purpose of this show. I'll use this. White Castle is the first fast food joint
Mm,
company in America, right?
okay.
And so they still are around, but with the way they've been successful, I watched a documentary on them. They never got into the toys. They never got into the
Mm,
franchising. They never got into the big celebrity endorsement. They put their food in roast grocery stores so people can make it at home, and they're still $100 million company. They're still family held, and they've never gotten swallowed by the Burger Kings, McDonald's, and other companies that have come and go and try to chase trends. They learned early on, this is my lane. I'm happy where I'm at. They're very well off. Like you're not gonna, the people who own, White Castle are not, paupers by any stretch of imagination, but they're
right.
not competing with a global company the size of McDonald's because if they did, they would have been swallowed whole.
Yeah.
So they're not in the same, they don't cultivate the same customer base. They're not,
Yeah.
it's just two different customer sets, but they never tried to do that.
Right. And it's good that you say that because I think a lot of times too, and maybe you feel this way too, like when people come on the show, like they'll be like, why do you bring people on that kind of do what you do? And I've never looked at it really like that. I don't really care because you've
That
kind of just said it. I think the right people get attracted to the right people.
right,
Like you're
right,
going to speak to certain people that are going to never want what you have and
right.
somebody else may, right?
I mean, like it's like a restaurant. You think you're the only place. Like anybody goes to a district, there are multiple bars and restaurants. This idea that you have something unique to the world is a fallacy. They're
Yeah.
buying you at this point.
Right.
You know,
Right.
processes and things are very can be duplicated very quickly. Right? Is there
Hmm.
anything really inherently different about a Coca Cola versus a Pepsi? And
Right.
if you actually put the ingredients together, it's the label, right? It's the
Yeah.
commercial. It's the person pitching the product, right? And there's still carbonated drinks with sugar and other additives to it, right? My show, I mean, you could go on a million different shows and talk to somebody about your entrepreneurial career and your success in pratfalls, but
Right.
maybe you decided to go on mine for reasons that maybe it felt like there was a good fit. So
Yeah.
this idea that there's a hidden gem out there, or, like there's a Shangri-La show that nobody's touched, you're fooling yourself. So just
Right.
just do your lane and do you.
Yeah, it's good that you say that. I do we are selling ourselves. I have a really
Absolutely.
funny coffee story about that. This one I will tell you, it might take more than 20 seconds, but back in the day, just so you know, I was 22 years in Mary Kay. I was in leadership, so I built teams. Well,
Yeah.
I went into a short period of time in this coffee company, and they were the people that did the skinny coffee. They had the patent. They came from Boca Raton, Florida,
Yeah.
came into Texas. I'm in the Dallas area.
Mhm.
Myself and my original co-host for Starter Girls,
Mhm.
we sort of spearheaded the Dallas market with this coffee thing. And I went to this networking event one night, and this guy was like, "So, why should I buy this skinny coffee from you?" And I said, "Because you get me. I'm going to
Exactly.
deliver it to you."
Exactly. That's
And
it.
I saw him at another event later, like at
Yeah.
another time. And he was like, "I remember you telling me
That's
that
it.
story."
That's it.
So,
Right. I mean,
yeah.
literally, like you're gonna sit back. You're gonna say with a straight face, like
Yeah.
that. Oh, you need to come on my show because I got the best show that can interview the best
Right.
way, and I got the best questions. Like, come on, dude. Like,
No. Yeah. Yeah. I just say you're
don't lie
gonna
to
have
yourself.
fun when you leave here, Rashad. That's the
That's
goal
it.
is you're gonna have a good time when you're on this show. That's all that's if we can aim for that, that's the win for the day,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know?
Why
I
do
love it.
people go to Disney over like Cedar Point? Right.
Yeah.
You can still
Right.
go on a roller coaster, right? Like you can still go on a roller. It's the experience of being at Disney that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's one of my favorite questions I love to ask is, and I feel like you've trickled in little pieces throughout this whole little dialogue that we've had here, but what's the best part of this? What do you love? What does this do for you? What do you love?
I mean, you get to talk to people that you would never normally talk to, right? Like there's this idea that for a long time that was sold to people that, you have to follow the structured linear path to get somewhere in life. And when you talk to these people who decided that they saw the fork in the road and they didn't, and they went straight ahead and they're like left, right. Nah, I'm going to take this one, because everybody's doing that and I want to try this different. If I fall flat on my face while doing it, at least I can say I did something different. I mean, I talked to people that were in the army that transitioned, military that transitioned to civilian life and, built businesses. I've talked to people that make luxury cakes, software companies, cybersecurity, CEOs, financial people, real estate people. When are you going to find that time to talk to these people, at your local grocery store? You're not.
Right. Right.
And that's the experience that this has allowed me to do.
I love it. No, and I would agree with you on that. So what is and I'm yeah, guessing you probably have a lot. This could be a hard
Mhm.
question for you, but maybe some of your favorite people that you've talked to, like some of the
Oh,
ones that have just kind of resonated with you.
yeah, for sure. I've always brought up this woman, and I'll continue to bring her up. Her name was Elizabeth Salaru. She's in England, UK, and so she created her own luxury line of baked goods and pastries, and she eventually got so good at it by bootstrapping it, she started getting family members of the royal family that wanted to get her goods and services, right?
Wow.
And you're just like, you couldn't even I mean, the idea, it goes back to like, I would never have talked to a woman like that ever.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Could have
And so
never
you're
met
sitting
her.
back and
Yeah.
right. So here you are in your kitchen, just trying to figure it out. Then next, you bake something nice for a friend at a wedding. Then you do something nice at a graduation event. And then maybe somebody was there to be like, yo, like, can we talk? And then it turns into a business. Right. And so the passion that, that woman showed, and all my guests are great. I'm fortunate to have really good guests, but that was unique because I'd never, like, you wouldn't think that starting in your kitchen would lead to that.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that
no,
was
that
that was
is
a
good.
heck
And
of an
you're right. You would
experience.
have never had that. You would have never had that conversation had you not been doing that podcast. That's a beautiful thing about this is that you have the ability to talk to people all over the world, you know?
You do.
So
You do. And
yeah.
that's really what it breaks down, is like breaking down the excuses, right? So like, you have to find the time, and you're going to do it when you're sleepy. You're going to do it when you have 3 hours worth of sleep. It's going to, was I always thrilled that I had back to backs, and you're just like, oh man, like I really did that to myself. I mean, I'm human, right? You're
Right.
human, right? But yeah, listen, it is what it is. They booked, you commit, you make it work. And then usually, flip of the coin, 75% of the time, it's going to work itself out.
Yeah. So who is somebody that you would love to get on the show? You haven't gotten them on here yet, and they're kind of on your, I guess, list
Yeah.
of to
Oh
be
man.
reach outs or get at some point.
You're gonna find this funny. It's actually not a CEO or business owner. I'm a huge boxing fan. I would love to have Terrence
Okay.
Crawford. I don't know if you've ever heard of Terrence Crawford, right?
I've
So
heard. I've
he was
heard.
the pound for
Yeah.
pound best. Yeah, I've been a fan forever, right? Like, so I'm a huge fan, and I know like that's a bucket list one. It's kind of out of the box.
Yeah.
I interview a lot of great people, but I would love to have Terrence Crawford on because, that guy from Omaha, Nebraska that became the best fighter I've ever seen. I would love to interview him.
Well, if you believe in manifestation, you put it out there, Rashad. It's out into the world. It's on my show now. You've said it, so maybe we'll drum it up and it'll happen for you.
Yeah, if he's listening, maybe he could be. You never know what somebody likes, right? So like, he could be. That's the most important thing, right? So like this show, you don't know I'll never assume what somebody likes, and that's the other beautiful
Right.
part about this show. You'll never assume what somebody likes, right? So
Yeah.
it just if anybody can take any piece of advice from this show, I would say if you're on the fence, think about when you're watching that next Netflix show and be honest with yourself, and then tell yourself, am I too busy or did you watch 4 hours worth? And listen, you find time to entertain yourself. I'm not hating, but if you say you want
Yeah.
something off the ground and then you spend the next 4 hours watching something on TV, that's not going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah. No,
It's
I
just
love
not.
it. And I guess maybe one last thing I want to ask you. We talked earlier on about kind of the goals. Obviously, we talked about the goals, right? I'd love to know like maybe a little bit more specific, like where do you see this? Like, you think that like
Yeah.
years down the road? I know you're
Yeah.
kind of taking it a little bit in
Yeah.
strides, but what's kind of the
I would
vision? Like,
really
what would
like
you
to
love to
help people
happen?
with like conferences.
Did I
I
lose
mean,
you?
yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be, full disclosure on the show. I would love it to be a global phenomenon, right? I think like, conferences and, pseudo kind of TED Talks, because I think when people see like entrepreneurship and they're like, okay, I heard that on the Tron podcast, I want to learn more, right? The guests that I have on the show, like, hey, if you created a business, if you created a product, a service, a good, let's showcase this on the show. And then, I would love for people to I have this business or creation. Let's do a live like event at your place to show what you're
Mm.
creating. Hey, you don't have to give away the secret of your IP. You can just show the finished product. But let's get some demos in real time to see how your product works. And I'll tell you where like some of this inspiration came from me. On Roku TV, there was Keanu Reeves did a 10-part series. Keanu Reeves could make movies. He's set for life. He doesn't have to,
Yeah.
but guy's a geek, right? He's a total nerd. Like
Right.
he's on documentaries, and it showed him going from place to place about his curiosity. He visited as a statue maker. He visited an architect in like Norway or Sweden that had like a restaurant that's halfway in the water, right? And so I'm like, damn, the world's biggest movie star is a nerd. So then you're like, okay, man, like shout out to that guy. I'm a big fan, but it shows you that even at that level, curiosity doesn't wane.
It's awesome. Well, you are doing good stuff. I love what you're doing. I love the energy. I love all of it because I think you got to have it to do this. And I'm glad that you're enjoying it because I think that's important because I think the moment you stop enjoying it,
Oh my gosh.
it's no longer worth it. You know what I mean?
Not even close.
So,
Not even close.
so any of my listeners out there right now that are listening to this and they want to find Tron, find this podcast, find you, where do we want to send them?
All major platforms, tronpodcast.com. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, and all the iHeartRadio, all the other major streaming platforms. Active on social media as well too. And if you are listening, the worst thing you can do is not start. The absolute worst thing you can do. Don't care. It doesn't matter what if you look foolish while doing it. I'm always a believer that I'd rather get knocked out in the arena than be that guy chugging beers laughing at the guy inside of it, right? Because at least they got knocked out fighting, right? And it says something when you're willing to put your name out there and be willing to you have to try. That's the biggest thing I'll say.
Yeah. And you definitely like sports. I got that because
Yeah,
that's in the language.
definitely
It's
more.
definitely
Yeah,
the topic.
I'm definitely more martial arts and boxing than
Yeah.
every other sport. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I had my kids were in karate. So my oldest was a black belt in karate. So
Yeah,
we had many years of that too. So I get
beautiful.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
get it.
heavy commitment, and I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, you are awesome. I want to tell you thank you for sharing your story with us. This is so much fun. Like I said, this first time
Oh
we're
man,
meeting and you get to come on here and talk about it. I love it. Love what you're doing. Like I said, want to salute you
thank
and
you.
cheer you on as you continue to build to the next whatever 100,000 downloads, wherever this
Thank you.
goes.
Thank you. And likewise to you as well, too. You've built a wonderful show with wonderful guests. I had a chance to see some of your clips and videos. You're a fantastic host. And, I want to give a shout out to you. It's about the team collective effort because there's very few that actually stick it through the highs and lows. So
Yeah.
commendable to you as well.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Of course, we want to say to the audience, we love you and appreciate you. We hope you found this episode both inspiring and informative. And reach out to Rashad, follow him, follow Tron. And like I always say, you know what to do. If you like the show, like, subscribe, comment, share. That helps us keep sharing all this fabulous content. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. I think you said that. All right,
Yeah.
you guys, take care, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.